What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 27 of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. I'd like to give a big shout out to our new listeners from the Singapore Community Development Council. That brings our total listeners to 30 countries. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support taking this podcast to even more people in more countries, click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation could change a life. When we come back, we'll get into our episode entitled Fear of Failure. Welcome back. I'd like to start this episode by saying that fear is a normal feeling. Our fear centers can actually save us from danger, and they can motivate us into action. So in this episode, I'm not talking about the normal human response of fear to a valid danger. I'm talking about when the danger is exaggerated in our mind or completely imagined by us, and in response, we develop unhealthy behavior patterns. You know those times when we rush into our drug of choice because it will numb our fears. And this sort of drug or alcohol use is very contagious, as substance abuse has a history of increasing dramatically during any local or national crisis. So I urge you to know your fear triggers. Pause, breathe, take one day at a time to control your fear. Because fear fuels impulsive reactions, and impulsive reactions fuel our addiction by feeding our compulsive choices. Let me repeat that. Fear fuels impulsive reactions, and impulsive reactions fuel our addiction by feeding our compulsive choices. This type of fear fits the acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. By this I mean we fear something that appears to be real, even though there's no real evidence to prove it. It can simply be that we feel threatened, betrayed, or undermined, and when that happens, we cling to those things that are familiar or known. Can you picture this with me? We're faced with an unknown, or we're faced with a situation of doubt, like, will I ever be the one who gets clean and sober? Or, am I destined to die in my addiction? If I try to go to rehab one more time, will I just fail again? And when all these doubts enter our mind, the normal and familiar that we run to is using our drug of choice again to numb that pain and doubt. When fear comes knocking on your door, what do? You know if you open that door and let fear in, it's going to take you hostage. What plan can you make to bolt the door every time fear comes knocking? Where can you get the strength to be able to lock the door and keep fear out? Let's start the answer to this by looking more closely at the fear of failure. Many times, I've had guys incarcerated or in rehabs, and they talk to me about their failure to be able to quit drugs and stay in recovery. They say words like, I've failed as a husband. I've failed as a dad, as a man, as a friend, as a son. I feel lower than a snake's belly in dust. But an ancient Chinese proverb says, failure is not falling down, but refusing to get up. The very fact that you're listening to this podcast says that you've chosen to get up and you've chosen to listen and learn and grow. I applaud you because I know that taking the step towards recovery includes the risk of relapse. Be encouraged by the teaching from the book of Romans, chapter 5, verse 4, which says that perseverance builds character, and character builds hope. U.S. President Barack Obama once said, "The real test is not whether you avoid this failure, because you won't. It's whether you let it harden or shame you into inaction, or whether you learn from it, whether you choose to persevere." South African President Nelson Mandela is quoted as saying, "Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." So even if your friends and family have been criticizing you because you haven't been able to successfully stay clean, I applaud you today for getting back up again and trying one more time. American author Jack Canfield said, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." Are you ready to take a step to the other side? And comedian and actress Lily Tomlin said, "The road to success is always under construction." So how can you see failure as a place to start building, as a place to learn? Well, for starters, don't add pressure by seeing it as a stepping stone to better things right away. Instead, see it as a place to pause, breathe, to meditate, to contemplate. Then and only then, get back up and learn so that you don't repeat the same mistake. You are not a failure because you have failed. We all fail. Look at professional athletes. They fail at least 2/3 of the time, and we call them superstars for the 1/3 that they did well. We get stuck in failure when we self-sabotage opportunities to move forward. We lose our confidence and our will to just try one more time. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You're able to say to yourself, 'I have lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along.' You must do the thing you think you cannot do." You see, fear of failure keeps us from succeeding. It is the fear that paralyzes us, stops us from doing the very things we know will move us forward to our goal. So fear can keep us in our addiction and keep us from taking the opportunities presented to us to get clean, and keep us from accepting the help of others. Why is the fear of failure so good at taking us hostage like that? The Bible tells us in 1 John chapter 4 and verse 18 that fear involves torment. Do you know the torment of fear? Do you know the torment of not wanting to let people down another time? Do you know the torment when you see that look of disappointment on a loved one's face? Do you know the torment of feeling unloved? Do you know the torment of only being loved when you can meet others' expectations first? Do you know the torment of feeling unworthy of any love? Do you know the torment that killed your dreams? Do you know the torment that kept you shackled and paralyzed? Do you know the torment of feeling like a failure again and again and again until you're convinced that you are a loser? Well, if you know any or all of these torments, then you know how vital it is that we reach out for help and we grasp a hold of those opportunities before us. Because you see, for many of us in recovery, The fear of failure also comes wearing many disguises. These disguises keep us paralyzed from taking these very steps of action that will help us. An example of these disguises is that the fear of failure in relationships can be disguised as fear of loneliness. So we justify not starting a new relationship because we don't want to risk being lonely if the relationship doesn't work out. Other disguised fears are the fear of starting over, the fear of change, the fear of rejection, the fear of the expectations of others, the fear of even feeling again, the fear of the loss of our comfort zone, and the loss of our comforter. And finally, the fear of perfection. I want you to be encouraged by the words of artist Salvador Dali, who said, "Have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it." You see, the fear of perfection is one of the most common disguises for the fear of failure. Many of us grew up in homes with unsupportive or critical parents. Perhaps you grew up with fear-based rules in your house or with a perfectionist in your house. And you knew that anything less than 100% perfect was totally unacceptable. The thoughts of youth growing up in that situation are described in the 2002 song by the group Simple Plan entitled Perfect. Listen to the lyrics. "Hey Dad, look at me. Think back and talk to me. Did I grow up according to plan? And do you think I'm wasting my time doing the things I want to do? But it hurts when you disapproved all along, and now I try hard to make it. I just want to make you proud. I'm never going to be good enough for you. I can't stand another fight, and nothing's all right." Shaw. Can you see how the burden of the fear of failure from our childhood can fuel addictive choices and behavior in our youth and adulthood? But you've heard in this episode, we somehow must become people who risk failure in order to succeed in our recovery. So how can you become someone who risks failure in order to succeed? First, find the root cause of your addiction. This is your emotional wound. It could be a feeling that you would never be good enough. And that wound needs to be healed in order to move forward. Second, transform your thoughts and mindset. By this I mean learn those things that you cannot change and begin to accept them. And as you accept them, you will begin to be able to shake those negative thoughts that you've always wanted to shake, but they've just kept haunting you. Third, see the steps of improvement that you have made to come to this point. You're on a journey, and don't lose sight of how far you've come. Fourth, learn from your mistakes. As you've heard in this episode, we all make mistakes. It's not about the fact that we fell, it's all about that we got back up again. Fifth, identify opportunities for growth and act on them. Reach out and grab a hold of the opportunities that are right in front of you. Sixth, surround yourself with positive people and give them the right to speak into your negativity. Seventh, learn to look at the best and worst case scenarios and develop backup plans ahead of time. In closing, remember, your dream doesn't have an expiration date. take a deep breath and try again. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. Tune in Monday for our next episode. If you'd like to contact me regarding a Q&A session on addiction, speaking engagements, addiction coaching or consulting, or to utilize the From A to D curriculum and podcasts in your location, please go to my website, www.fromatod.org, and click on the contact page or leave me a message on Anchor. As always, stay safe and stay strong.